there are some preliminary result analysis that you have to do whenever you get your data file. And the first two that we saw are the test of the validity and the reliability of the data. We have other host of tests that you can do, so I want to show you that one as well. So we have some videos. Let me just check these out. So I've shown how to calculate for common method bias. Is that not it?
Yeah, we have to,
common method bias and how to interpret it. We have done that. We have also seen how to test for KMO and Bartlett's test.
Yeah.
So that one is also there. We have also shown you how to do principal component factor analysis.
Yeah.
Either for confirmatory or exploratory factor analysis. There is one. We have also done something about reliability test. Is that not it? So we are done with that one. We have one called non-response bias. Non-response bias. Non-response bias is calculated to check if the respondents were willing to answer the questionnaire that you gave to them or not. And we know that in the questionnaire that we are dealing with, they are on a particular scale, maybe a 5-point Likert scale or 7-point Likert scale. Now, we want to see if for a particular cluster, the respondents were willing to answer the question or they were not willing to answer the question. And the test that you can conduct to check whether they are willing to answer or not is what we call Levin's homogeneity of variance test. Levin's homogeneity of variance tests. Levin's homogeneity of variance tests. But how do you do this? It means that you have to create what we call wave when you are entering your data. You have to create what we call what? Wave. When you
Wave.
Yeah, wave.
W-A-V.
Yeah, W-A-V, wave. When you are doing the data collection or when you are entering the data that you have collected, you create what we call wave in the data file. Okay. Now let's understand what we call wave. We believe that there are some factors that we can consider when we are collecting our data. For instance, we may decide that we will not collect all the data at a particular point in time, right? So you collect some for the first time, and then you collect the other for what? For the second time. So now, first timers are the first waiver, the second time becomes what? The second waiver. So when you pick any questionnaire and you want to enter, you have to ask yourself, does it belong to the first wave or what? The second wave. So that's why you have to include it as part of the coding. So the data collection that you're going to do, maybe first batch of data collection, it took you 2 months. All those things, you label them what? Report 1, or what we call early respondents. Then some of them may not respond on time for you. Is that not it? Yeah. So you can label them as what? Wave 2. Or in your research, you are targeting a heterogeneous group. Maybe you are targeting between male and what? Female. So all the female are wave 1 and all the male are what? Wave 2. So when you are entering, if you pick any of the questionnaire, you have to ask yourself, is it belonging to wave 1 or what? Wave 2. So that is what that will be done. Now, if you're able to establish your wave, then you can now compute for to check whether they were ready to answer or they were not ready to what? Answer the questionnaire through the conduct of what we call the Levin's homogeneity of variance test.
So with that one, you are saying if, let's say, your sample size is 200, and it makes, let's say, first go for 100,
That becomes the first wave.
Then later on you
Go
go
for another 100. That becomes what? The second wave. Or you collecting from small and medium enterprises. So you collect from all of them, but you break it down into what? Those belonging to small and those belonging to what? Medium enterprise. Okay, so then you label it as wave as part of the data file when you are doing the coding. So that is it. But the other time when we were looking at common method bias, we said that if we have so many questions packed, people are not willing to answer. Is that not it? So before you can compute for the test of homogeneity or variance, you have to ask yourself how many questions or skill must your questionnaire contain before you can compute for that. The machine tells us that it shouldn't be more than 100. So if the items on your questionnaire is more than variables are more than what? 100. You cannot go on and compute for non-response bias. So it shouldn't be more than what? 100. And I think it is reasonable, madam, you develop questionnaire and you ask more than 100 questions for people to answer. Do you think they'll be willing to respond to it?
No.
Very good. So that one alone, the length of the number of questions or items in the questionnaire can determine whether the people were willing to respond to the questions or they were not willing to respond to the question. Okay. So what is the rule? When you compute for your homogeneity or variance and your sig value is significant, if it is significant, it means they were not willing to answer.
Your
Sig value, that is the p value.
okay.
If your p value is less than 0.05 or equal to 0.05, it means that the people were not willing to respond to that particular question. Okay? But if it is above 0.05, then it means that the people were willing to respond to that question. So essentially the wave is the distinguishing factor. The wave that you create is the distinguishing factor that you can use to separate the various data according to the groups. Okay? So we want to just illustrate one with the data and see how we can interpret it. So when we are done, we can tell our readers or our users that for this particular question, people were willing to answer. For this one, they were not willing to answer. So the question is, if you conduct a research and you want people to answer or respond, what do you have to do so that they respond?
You want them to answer.
You want them to answer your questionnaire. What are some of the things, the ethical principles that you have to follow to make sure that people really answer your questionnaire?
Okay.
You should take them through.
You can walk them through, explain it to them. What else?
Yeah. The length of the question is shorter.
Yeah, so the number of questions or items reasonable. Is that what it is? Okay.
And giving the questionnaire to the target group themselves.
Yeah, we have to give the questionnaire to the target group themselves. What else?
Any neutral item to remove it.
Yeah, you may decide to give them false skill because if you give them neutral, they are likely that no, they will not respond. So they will take the neutral. So you take it off.
And you can negate some of the items.
You can also negate some of the items. So you see that common method bias strategies to prevent that, they're almost like similar to what? The non-response. You can also give them a reminder messages. Nowadays, we use electronic means to collect the data. So if you have created a WhatsApp group and they are on it, you constantly remind them about the need for them to respond. If there's the need for you to call them on phone to can also call them. So you can call to remind them, or you can pay personal visits. Is that not it? If there's a need for you to go to wherever they are located, go and visit them and remind them about the need for them to respond, especially if your skill, if the data collection method is the drop and pick approach, where you give it to them, you allow some time for them to go through and then go and collect it. Okay. So these are some of the things that you have to do in order to ensure that you improve the state of responses. So if you can statistically detect whether people were willing to answer the question or not by following the procedure that we are going to talk about.